What's up, everybody? This is going to be my first time doing any sort of reaction video, and I'm not sure if I'm going to release this on my channel or if I'm just making this for my own benefit in preparation to discuss new objectivist or objectivist student sort of discussion with each other, etiquette, whatever. Basically, we're going to talk about this probably as a theory for a little while. So I'm making this video to collect my thoughts. And so I might not list this video. I might keep it private to present to, I don't know, maybe Rucka, or maybe I'll release it. I don't know yet. So, with that being said, I think my goal for this video is to determine whether or not any of the parties involved here maybe making any errors that I can see, what students of objectivism should be doing, or how they should interact with each other online, what is appropriate as far as criticizing each other. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. I know this is kind of a low low energy intro, but I'm still kind of new to this, so hopefully that will change over time. Until then, I think it's about time to just jump right into this. I'm going to be reacting to Rucka's reaction to Analyze This, reacting to Pooya. So this is a multi-level reaction. And I'll probably be editing out any pauses or anything uninteresting and only focusing on what I have to say. So I'll link the videos relevant in the description below, but as far as anything that Rucka or Analyze This has to say, that I have nothing really of note to comment, I will edit it out. Just wanting to clarify that.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the programming, and we are going to review a video by a guy who goes by the name of Analyze This, aka KJ, as he tells us. Now, I know KJ, I've known him for a while. He's got a channel now talking about psychology from an objectivist perspective, and he did a reaction to my recent conversation with Pooya. So let's just jump right into it.
See, I just want to point out, listen to how efficient and short that intro was compared to mine. I need to be a lot more prompt about what I'm doing, setting my goals, things like that, in a video. But I didn't script this or anything, but maybe Rucka didn't either. In fact, I would guess he didn't, and he's just better at talking off the cuff. But, yeah.
Yay! Okay, why is that in there? Straight, right off the bat. Is that like, what is the meaning of this? Is this funny? Like, what is the purpose of this Neverland Ranch evidence room sound clip at the beginning? I don't understand it.
Hey!
Okay, so I just have to say that Rucka is pretty prone to this. He just catches on to things that he thinks are funny, and just mildly roasts people. I mean, the entire first little bit of my interview with him, he was teasing me about my name. So I don't think this is atypical. Rucka's a comedian. Whether or not he can be a little too harsh sometimes, that may be, but we'll get into that further, I guess. But I think yeah, I don't have any opinion on the on the alleged Neverland Ranch or whatever intro. If it matches Analyze This sense of life, then more power to him.
Welcome to...
We're off to a bad start right off there. We got that sound at the beginning. People are wondering, like, who put this sound of children cheering at the beginning of this video? And then it cuts to a annoyed-looking gentleman who looks upset at the world. Why did this guy put that sound at the beginning of his video is what people are asking. So right off the bat, before we even get to the actual video itself, people are now entering with a bit of confusion.
To Analyze This, my name is KJ. I got into a disagreement recently, although I think it barely counts as a disagreement. More of a verbal exchange would be the broader category it could be subsumed under. The exchange was on Rucka's more recent video that came out on March 26th, titled Pooya the Persian, Quarantine Version, Final Boss Follow-Up.
This is low energy, this is like most of the videos on this channel. It's low energy and it moves way too slow. Now, this video picks up. Don't worry about that.
Now, this is not Rucka roasting this guy. This is actually a legitimate criticism. I would not be upset if he gave me the same kind of criticism. When I interviewed Rucka, he was really nice and everything, but at the end of the video, he did say, try to sit up straight and everything. Try to get a more flattering camera angle, things like that, which somebody could take that as like kind of insulting if they were being overly sensitive about it. But he was literally giving me some solid advice for being a better video maker. I mean, I say too many times, and Diego's been grilling me for it lately, and it's legitimate criticism to say don't do that, try to get over that. So I would not take Rucka's criticism here lightly. It's legitimate advice, and I could probably learn from it.
KJ gets excited, but KJ, you need to bring this. You need to up your energy in general. It shouldn't need to come from a negative place.
Life and happiness, vis-a-vis ethics.
I think it's pronounced vis-a-vis, but I'm not the one who went to school.
And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to...
I thought he was about to start the video.
Over the disagreement.
But first he's going to explain to us that he's about to watch the video.
Clarify the point I made, and like in my disagreement and cooperation video, kind of do a meta-commentary on disagreement and how disagreement should happen. So, to start, I guess, I will let Pooya speak for himself, and I will play the part of the...
I truly don't understand. This is what weirds me out about this. I don't understand why someone explains what he's about to do play by play. Like, is this to commemorate the occasion? I'm asking. This is a serious question. I don't understand it.
Again, this may be legitimate criticism. I think when you learn these kind of things over time, the beginning of your videos become less sloppy, more engaging. I'll probably lose a large amount of viewers on this video if I release it just in the first few minutes, because I kind of ramble and I don't have as much focus. So this is kind of legitimate criticism. It's not just Rucka nitpicking this guy to nitpick this guy.
Show.
Is it to emphasize the importance of what's about to take place?
Podcast thing. I don't know what Rucka calls his thing here, his channel.
And this is not just a criticism of Rucka. I'm going to be commenting on what Analyze This says, and I'm going to be commenting on what Pooya says. And I might even be commenting on what I say, because things that I say are in the video too.
I will play a part of the video that Pooya made the remark I was responding to.
I could have done better when I watched that video, but generally.
What we're talking about in this clip is our first conversation, me and Pooya. So Pooya presented a list of examples of why he believes that Charles II is a rationalist, is a faulty philosopher, regardless of how he's living or how he applies philosophy. But Pooya says that Charles's thinking is faulty. His methodology is rationalistic. And here I am telling Pooya, I just got done telling him in this clip, that since our first conversation, I haven't even watched any of Charles's videos. I previously had been still reviewing some of his content and referring to it when I was unclear on something, but since then, not at all.
So, I actually stopped watching Charles' videos as soon as it became clear that he was not going to respond to any legitimate criticism that Rucka gave him. I think he pretty much poisoned the well at that point, and all of Pooya's criticisms of Charles about him being a rationalist are legitimate. They stand up to scrutiny, as Rucka and Pooya's exchanges have proven. And the reason why I do not trust Charles, even when he is right, is for reasons that we'll get into further here. But I'm going to let them go over their arguments more before I really get into details with my thoughts.
I guess the jury is still a bit out on what that is, or if I should continue to refer to Charles's backlog for things I'm unclear on. But so far, I just...
No, don't refer to Charles. Pretty much anything that Charles says that's legitimate is said by better sources and sources that are more trustworthy.
I don't look at him the same way. For me, that was what I just said. For me, I don't look at him the same way since our first conversation. And here's Pooya saying,
generally, I was satisfied with my performance. I mean, I'm not a teacher. I'm not that good at presenting, but I did my best, and I think I brought some points. If I was searching for it, I could have brought even more points. And the fact that he made those mistakes makes everything else that he says unreliable. So because philosopher is someone that you just need to trust.
Okay, I think I'm more than willing to go into my definition of trust and why you do need to, at a certain point, trust philosophers. So, I think trust is an economization of division of labor in the realm of first-hand knowledge. So, for an example, you don't have to be a car mechanic to trust your car mechanic to fix your car. You can't know everything. You're not omniscient. And so, being that you're not omniscient, you need a division of labor for first-hand knowledge as well. And that doesn't mean that, well, let me back up a little bit. So not everyone can be a philosopher, but that doesn't mean that most people don't use philosophy at all. They just have more basic levels of philosophy, and the more complicated things, it's fine to leave that to more intellectual people. This is a hard argument to make in a philosophy community because everyone in the philosophy community is interested in philosophy as such, so they don't see why not everyone can study philosophy. But philosophy is not just for elites that are interested in philosophy. Philosophy is for the everyday person. It doesn't make you a philosopher king to do the legwork, and then and it doesn't make you a second-hander to benefit from better philosophers doing the legwork for you. Like, I'm not second-handed because I go by the philosophy of Ayn Rand instead of inventing objectivism by myself. You know, I can't do that. I'm not a genius like she was. So yes, trust is just using division of labor in the realm of first-hand knowledge. That's not a technical definition. That is me trying to make a technical definition. And it differs from faith because faith, you have no reason to believe something on faith. Trust, you have evidence to believe somebody's credibility. And so when someone's credibility is called into question, like Charles, it's unreasonable to trust them. So proper trust is based on reason.
And it's really, really, really important. Like, just like a doctor, if your doctor, I don't know, used knife instead of, I don't know, saline or whatever once, you will not trust that person anymore. Like, so it's just so dangerous and so intricate as being a doctor and a surgeon. Yeah, that's a good example. Well, today we're
Okay, so that's what Pooya said, and this sparked a red flag for me. Now, apparently didn't spark a red flag for Rucka. That's all right. You know, he can't jump in at every point a red flag comes up. I saw him nodding a little bit.
Okay, so first of all, Rucka is not Analyze This. He's not going to think about the same things as Analyze This at the same time, even if they held the same premises, which I don't think they do completely. But you can't just say anyone who holds honest ideas would recognize this at this time. Like if you don't see the red flag, you're dishonest. You can't say that because you're not them. How do you know? And this red flag popped up to Analyze This because he thinks that means that you cannot go by individual correctness on a particular subject. Like if a doctor is a good doctor most of the time and then messes up once, they're still trustworthy as a doctor because they're right most of the time. But the thing is, Rucka and Pooya realize that knowledge is integrated. So if someone makes a brash rationalization like many of the claims that Charles makes, that does make them a rationalist, and they are prone to infect a lot of their other ideas with rationalizations. So when they are clearly a habitual rationalist, even the correct things they say are called into suspect or suspicion.
That was interesting.
Oh, and the whole just nodding when you're listening thing is totally legitimate. Like it's not being phony or anything to just, nod. And on the cuff, when you're listening to somebody and you're just nodding along and thinking about what they're saying, that doesn't mean that you agree. That means you're thinking about it. So, yeah.
Okay, Charles. Jesus Christ, that was creepy. I've noticed Rucka nodding his head. Apparently, it did not spark a red flag for Rucka. Jesus Christ, what the fuck was that? Are red flags like the Emperor's new clothes? Are they like religious epiphanies? Does everyone need to get the red flag or they're guilty of something? The hell was that supposed to be? That was like Charles incarnate right there, dude. That creeped me the fuck out.
So, I mean, it's a little harsh, but I think this criticism is pretty legitimate. If you're making these broad brushstrokes of you should have noticed a red flag there, then that pretty much puts your thinking as like your method of thinking as paramount and discounting other methods of thinking. Like, well, I know I'm right and I got a red flag there, so anyone who didn't get a red flag there is wrong and is dishonestly so or ignorantly so. And I think to be charitable, Analyze This said it's fine that Rucka didn't notice this. Not that there was anything to notice, because Pooya is right, in my opinion. But I think Analyze This is not saying that Rucka is dishonest by not noticing this. I think maybe calling Analyze This Charles for this is a little bit uncharitable on Rucka's part. Because Analyze This he didn't say, oh, Rucka didn't notice this and now I'm suspicious of him because an honest person would have noticed this. He didn't say that. That's what Charles would have said. So, but I can't fully blame Rucka for this reaction because of how he's been burned. I've kind of been burned similarly, but I'll go into that a little bit later.
Huge red flag for me. This is a huge red flag.
I guarantee if KJ had a bigger audience right now, like if this was a Charles video, the comments would be full of people saying, "Oh, I saw the red flag. Yeah, did you get the red flag? Oh, I felt the red flag. Oh, yeah, I got a purple flag, but I'm gonna introspect on that until it's red next time."
That was pretty good. Purple flag.
The hell was that? What kind of accusatory shit was that? I was nodding my head. I nod whenever I'm thinking, but also what he's saying is sort of consists with what I know to be true. I'm, like I said, not sure if Charles is to be completely removed from the list of people that I refer to, but it is true that if a philosopher shows faulty methodology of thinking, then it becomes increasingly difficult to trust what comes out of their publishing.
So if someone says one false thing, we can just ignore everything else they've said?
No, not if they say one false thing. It's if it is demonstrated that their methodology is faulty, then it becomes increasingly difficult to trust what they say. As with any specialized skill.
Again, because knowledge is integrated with the entire body of your knowledge. So if you hold rationalist premises in one area, you are very not in one area, but in multiple areas, it is quite likely that you will rationalize even where you are right.
It's exactly like a doctor. I mean, it's not literally exactly like a doctor, but it's similar. Someone has to focus on a specific field and do a lot of legwork while I'm over here working on something else, and I trust the philosopher with the best reputation, the one who is known to employ the methodology that is rational and logical.
I have to trust a philosopher? I can't independently understand what they're saying?
No, that's not the argument. The argument is not that you cannot do a certain level of philosophy. The argument is that unless you are willing to take upon yourself to do the full amount of labor it takes to be an expert in philosophy, then you have to learn it from someone who has. Just drawing back to the doctor example, if a doctor recommends some medicine to you, then you can either say, well, I'm going to learn about everything that this medicine does and how it affects my body and decide for myself whether or not I should take it, or I'll just take the doctor's advice and save myself that division of labor. And some people are just not medicinalists or whatever the word. They're not, they just, it's beyond them to look into particular fields. This is a hard argument to make to a bunch of intellectuals, because I think a lot of people that hear this argument would say, "Oh, I'm smart enough to look into this and that and the other. I could look into anything and figure it out for myself." And it's like, okay, but do you have the time? Do you have other better things to do, more productive things to do with your life than solving all of your problems by yourself? You know, do you need to invent the iPhone before you buy an iPhone, or do you just want to buy the iPhone and trust Steve Jobs that it works? Or do you have to look into the mechanisms for yourself? So, yeah, it's not blind faith. It's just using your time for better things.
I have to just trust them?
That's an interesting little dichotomy between trust and independently understanding what they. I don't know. Is that what Pooya is saying? He's saying you need to trust a philosopher blindly without thinking for yourself, based on the 8 hours of me and Pooya, two laymen, discussing philosophy for 8 hours to figure out if Charles should be trusted qua philosopher. Is that what you took away? That Pooya is saying one should blindly trust a philosopher?
How do I establish that trust? I find out they're right about one thing, and then I just trust everything else they say until I'm proven otherwise.
Is that what you think Pooya is saying? You find out they're right about one thing, and then you blindly trust everything they say?
No, this is an argument about certainty, and I think this. I could be as charitable as interpretation I can give Analyze This on this statement is that he's trying to avoid an error of skepticism. He doesn't want to say that I'm going to throw out pretty much any philosopher based on the idea that if they're wrong about one thing, they could be wrong about anything. But certainty does not require omniscience. So if somebody like Charles gives you compounding evidence to suggest that they are a rationalist, which he has, you can say with certainty that this man is a rationalist, he's an emotionalist, he is not to be trusted with philosophy, and you would be better spending your time learning from someone who has proven to themselves that they have conquered such errors, like Leonard Peikoff, who used to be a rationalist, but he has learned from all those errors, and now he is a master at combating rationalism. Now, if Charles returned and did the legwork to defeat his errors, he could be better than ever, and he would earn the trust of anybody studying objectivism. But until he does the legwork, I am not going to trust him.
He literally said, if they're wrong about one thing, but it needs to, I mean, if they're wrong about a methodological thing, speaking extemporaneously, I guess.
Extemporaneously, but
whatever that word is, he's saying, if they're wrong about something important, I guess. Anyway, I mean, this seems like a fairly non-controversial thing to say among objectivists, to say that if a philosopher is shown to be faulty in their methodology, then all of their work becomes suspect.
Yes, this is pretty common amongst objectivists to understand this, because objectivists, unlike most people, understand the concepts of certainty and integration. So, to analyze this, I would suggest to look into certainty, especially Leonard Peikoff's lecture on certainty, and look into how all knowledge is integrated. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here, that he is simply trying to avoid skepticism by looking into something himself fully on a case-by-case basis. But he has that bias because he's an intellectual person, much like many objectivists. So he might not understand fully what trust is legitimately for, because as an intellectual, he doesn't really need to trust many people. But this is a concept that I think he should look into.
Doesn't that consist with, philosophers rule the world, with ideas are the motor of history?
Otherwise?
Yes. Philosophers rule the world, and ideas are the motor of history, plainly because, not because philosopher kings are dictators of everyone, but because there has to be a division of labor, because people have to do other things in order to live. They can't just all be philosophers. But philosophy rules the lives and actions of humans. So, properly so, the division of labor puts a huge amount of power on philosophers that they deserve to have.
Don't I have to understand something about what they're saying and have grasped that independently to have trust them? Or do I just mindlessly employ some principle of a philosopher's and it works for me, like the doctor injecting me with some, healing solution I don't understand. And it's like, oh, well, that healing solution worked, so I guess I trust this doctor. Oh, I mindlessly employed some principle of Rand.
Do you mindlessly trust a doctor, or do you look at their credentials? Do you know that they came from a reputable school, they've got a certification, they've got consumer reports monitoring them, they've got other patients?
Yeah, there should be a reasonable amount of looking into something in order to verify it reasonably. I'm not saying the division of labor in the realm of first-hand knowledge allows for just going through life second-handed. But you need to economize your time.
Do you just mindlessly believe whatever a doctor tells you because he tells you so? Whatever goes into trusting a doctor, a similar process goes into trusting a philosopher.
And ethics, I guess I should just trust everything else she says. How do you employ a principle that you don't understand? How do you independently employ it? You can't. You can't just trust that what they're saying. It doesn't mean anything. You have to grasp it yourself. You have to independently grasp it. I mean, this was, in my worst interpretation of what he's saying, a smear job. It's a smear job against Charles too. Oh, Charles said a couple false things that we disagreed with. I gave an argument, I being Pooya. Pooya gave an argument for Charles being a rationalist, whatever that even means, to call someone a rationalist generally. I mean, Descartes was a rationalist. Spinoza was a rationalist. Leibniz was a rationalist. What does it mean to be a rationalist?
So, I think it's pretty clear here that Analyze This is not getting the whole habitual errors being integrated with the rest of your body of knowledge. I keep harping on this, but from those conclusions, I think Analyze This is operating honestly. But I can't help but keep mentioning it when he builds off of this error.
Substituting a word for its definition. That's what it means to be a rationalist. Separating ideas from reality. Deducing only. Taking one idea and just inferring from it rather than inducting or inducing, however you put it. You're coming from such a place of superiority, but you're bringing up like, well, what does rationalist mean anyway?
Rucka is actually really right here in almost a complementary way. Analyze This is looking at this problem from a perspective of superiority, because in this area he is, much like many other philosophy students, superior. He is interested in philosophy as such. He spends his time studying philosophy as such.
Yes, it's a school. There's a school of philosophy called rationalism, but objectivists have struggled with those tendencies, which is why Peikoff did his Understanding Objectivism course, which is a very, very valuable course.
Okay, so maybe Charles said some, quote, rationalistic things. Everything else he said is called into...
I don't understand the reason for, say, quote, rationalistic things. If the things he said are rationalistic, they're rationalistic. If they're not rationalistic, then don't say maybe he said some rationalistic things. That's a personally, maybe that was a slip of the tongue or something, but that's not correct to say that. Don't say, quote, don't put something in scare quotes if it's true. Doing that on habit is a result of having to make a concession but not liking it.
Into question now. We can't trust him anymore.
Called into question, absolutely.
We can't listen to him anymore. Let's not. Let's put Charles away. We can't trust him. I can independently evaluate whether or not he's saying something true or saying something false.
Yes, Analyze This probably can very easily, but it would what time he spends on Charles 2 would probably be better spent on Leonard Peikoff or Ayn Rand or Harry Binswanger or non-objectivists that are more right and less rife with rationalizations than Charles 2. Now, if somebody is particularly interested in combating rationalizations and wanting to recognize them, then they should, in fact, look into Charles 2. But I do not think that pretty much anything that Charles has said is very original. He mentions that in his upcoming novel that he is going to write, I don't know when, that he's found why consciousness makes free will possible, or something like that. That seems to be the only idea of originality he has posited in his entire video series, and he would not reveal the mechanics of it, so I can't even confirm his theory or not. If he did release that book, I would be interested in hearing that theory, but I don't really trust that. I would have to look into it with harsh scrutiny.
I don't need to trust him. What is he talking about? So, major red flag. I obviously disagree with everything he just said, and I'm obviously upset about it for the same reason I'm upset when anyone says something false that is that is important. Now, I'm going to get more upset after Pooya responds to my comment here. Okay, so I see this red flag. Rucka didn't point anything out here. I see him trying to sweep Charles under the rug, but I'm not going to name what I think is happening. I'm just going to target the aspect of his comment that I disagreed with. So I go into the comment section here.
My God, we're 13 minutes into the video, and I am going on 50 minutes. The amount of editing I will have to do on this video is astronomical.
Let's not scroll down too far. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. And I respond to what he said, and this is what I said. I'll just read it. Listening to a doctor is not like listening to a philosopher. A doctor has specialized knowledge that you don't have access to, the data of his medical profession, his experience treating patients, etc. Philosophers deal in general knowledge, knowledge that refers to everything, or most things, and everyone has access to this data. There is no reason to need to trust a philosopher. He either says true things or not. He either gives good arguments or not. Say you are a detective interrogating a serial killer, and the killer starts espousing the objectivist ethics. Whether or not what he's saying is true is independent of how much you trust him, how much you trust his understanding of what he's saying, your judgment of how much he lives by what he's saying, etc. Words have a meaning independent of the speaker. And parenthetically, I'll add, you can find that meaning in a dictionary. We can learn from words. This is true. Anyone who's read a dictionary for fun knows this. We can evaluate the truth or falsehood of ideas independent of who is uttering the words and what other things the person is wrong about.
Yeah, but if someone is a professional philosopher, then their faulty methodology makes their reputation suffer.
Also, the only reason people can make it as professional philosophers is because the knowledge that they form expertise in is not easily accessible to the average person. Although, technically, you are right, Analyze This, about the broad knowledge of philosophy is generalized, and you can figure it out if you are a genius simply by introspection. But most people are not fast thinking enough to simply figure out everything that is true in philosophy just by introspection.
So if Charles came to us right now with a super cool integration...
But anybody, even the simplest person, when presented with true philosophy by an intellectual, can introspect and check that it is true. But it is much easier to do that than to come up with it on your own.
Life-changing integration. Oh, well, he said those rationalistic things in the past, so we can't trust him, we're not going to listen to him.
Anyone else could come to you with a super awesome integration. The point is, should Charles be up there on the list of objectivist philosophers or not? We're not saying he can never say anything true again.
That's what Pooya is suggesting we do. Sounds a bit like a philosopher king to me, doesn't it? I don't care about trusting to. It's irrelevant. Does he say true things or not? Does he largely say true abstract things or not? This is an important point because it reveals an error regarding how people choose to listen to others and how they choose to take in information.
Now, this whole philosopher king accusation, it seems like an ad hominem, but I think considering that Analyze This is not seeing the proper use of trust, he is forced to draw the conclusion that if you do not advocate that everybody think out philosophy for themselves, then you are advocating for philosopher kings to dictate truth to others, and that is just not the case. But I am going to give the benefit of the doubt to Analyze This for this, and so I'm not going to criticize this philosopher king accusation with such harsh judgment.
That's what I said. Now, this is an argument. I'm giving an argument here. It's very concise. I'm not practicing legalese here. Legalese is a term, I believe, originated by Steven Pinker to refer to the kind of language used in legal documents. Because the language of legal documents has to guard against ill-intentioned interpretations of the text. I'm not guarding against ill-intentioned interpretations here. I'm not... An argument in good faith shouldn't require legalese. That being said, I think I made a good argument, and I think I'm right. This is how Pooya responded. This is his edited comment. I'll read the unedited comment afterwards. This comment shows that you need a course in epistemology. Either go learn it and become an informed, proper intellectual, or go learn whatever you chose to do, and I'm assuming he meant let, but he accidentally deleted it, and let the intellectuals do the philosophical thinking. And then he said in his edit, I did not mean any condescension or attack, and I have phrased wrongly. Okay. If that's an apology, maybe accepted. We'll talk about that in a bit. This is what the comment said before he edited it. This comment shows that you are in desperate need of a course in epistemology. Either go learn it and become an informed, proper intellectual, or go learn whatever you chose to do and become a productive member of society, and let the intellectuals do the philosophical thinking.
So, thinking about Pooya's response in the revised version and in the original version, it does seem like what he said aligns with what I have said so far about the role of intellectuals versus the everyday person. And he is trying to Analyze This that, well, he's not being specific enough if he is trying to Analyze This about certainty and trust. He should have been more specific instead of just saying, you need to study epistemology. He should have pointed out the specific things that Analyze This was making an error about. But in general, understanding certainty and the proper role of trust is epistemological. And therefore, Analyze This does need to study some epistemology. And if he does not want to, it would be better if he left the division of labor to other philosophers, or to other intellectuals, and did something more productive with his time. But that is not something I agree with. Analyze This is clearly passionate about ideas, and I think it would be wrong of him to waste his intellect on abandoning philosophy. So I would just say to Analyze This, you're doing a relatively great job, and please consider my criticism of how certainty and integration work. Yeah, Pooya was too quick to condemn and dismiss Analyze This here. But seeing this error sometimes can be frustrating for people in the know, and oftentimes when you see somebody making an error, instead of wishing to correct them, it's easy to be overwhelmed with the emotion of, if you're going to be making this error, kindly get out of the realm of intellectuals and leave it to people who are right. This is not a correct attitude to have. But Pooya expressed a extreme level of remorse over his original comment. I believe face to face with Analyze This, they would have a lot more in common and a lot more good faith than over internet comment exchanges on YouTube. So I am not going to go into the drama of that very much.
So who's Pooya's audience? If only the intellectuals are allowed to do the philosophical thinking, who's he talking to? And how does one decide whether or not to trust a philosopher?
The audience of a philosopher is anybody who is interested in philosophy, but is not as good at it as the philosopher. Pooya is not a philosopher, he's a student of philosophy. So his audience is anyone who can learn from him. I think I'll expound on that later.
If I can't do the intellectual thinking myself because it's just too challenging, oh man, I can't do it myself. How do I decide who to trust?
His comment definitely comes off rude, and a part of that is, I think, his being a 7-Eleven Indian who doesn't really speak English that well. And I think what he's trying to say is, and we went more into it on Diego's show when I asked him about this, he was trying to say, you clearly don't understand how complicated epistemology is, so go study it if you think it's that simple.
I actually do not think Pooya's error here has to do with a language barrier. I think Pooya's error here has to do with him being extremely intellectual. This may be an incorrect conclusion for me to draw, but in my experience, intellectuals like Pooya, who are very young but very, very smart, tend to jump the gun, and for a few reasons like this, I do not trust Pooya fully. I think he is a good person and well-meaning, but I just saw Rucka's face here. I think Pooya is a good guy, but I am extremely wary of his conclusions because of how young he is and how smart he is. This could be unfair to him, but I'm going to reserve my judgment for after he has done a larger amount of legwork and has proven himself, maybe after his novel. if it happens to be very good.
And I know you guys got into that more of an argument about that. You're saying Pooya is a philosopher king, and I'm his fellow philosopher king. Like, he thinks me and him can discuss philosophy, but nobody else. That's what you took away from him saying? Again, what he actually said was, after listing 10 examples of Charles showing rationalistic tendencies, Charles should no longer be trusted as a philosopher. That's what he said. You took that as Pooya is a philosopher king.
How do I decide to trust Pooya's argument that Charles too is a rationalist versus trusting Charles too? I clearly don't know anything. I've never taken a course.
You've created this narrative in your head now. You're like arguing with somebody that didn't say what you heard.
Course in epistemology. I'm not a proper intellectual. How do I know who to trust?
He was replying to your comment, which downplayed.
I think that Analyze This' reaction here clearly shows that he thinks that Pooya is suggesting he be a skeptic. So his argument passionately against this is an honest one, and it's good not to be a skeptic, but it's also good to understand the intellectual division of labor and understand the role of certainty.
The complication of philosophy and made it sound like you could go to any philosopher and just hear them say something and not have to worry about if their methodology is faulty or not. Because even a guy with faulty methodology could come up with something excellent.
So Pooya is saying, by implication, and I don't think this is an ungenerous implication to draw out, that, only the philosopher kings, only the intellectuals can understand philosophy. You have to have this special status. Well, how do you acquire this special status? Well, you have to commit to this. It has to be your specialized discipline. And only the people who commit to this as their specialized discipline can possibly understand it. And the bakers and the doctors and the engineers, they just have to take us on faith. They just have to trust us or not.
No. So he, by not understanding the legitimate form of trust, he is equating it with faith. But again, trust is because we are not omniscient. Trust is economizing the division of labor in the realm of first-hand knowledge. At a certain point, you have to trust that division of labor. You have to use a certain level of trust in order to not be a complete skeptic.
Either do we smile nicely? Are we pleasant? Okay, I trust that person. I'll just listen to whatever they say.
Again, Pooya is writing off a philosopher for having bad methodology. He's throwing the entire philosopher in the trash, and you're accusing him of wanting everyone to blindly follow philosophers. You're having a conversation in your mind with somebody who just doesn't exist.
Philosophically, what does it mean to just trust a philosopher? What does that mean in practice? If I trust a doctor, I trust him to treat me. If I trust a mechanic, I trust him to fix my engine. What does it mean to trust a philosopher? I can't act on knowledge I don't have. I trust Rand was right about epistemology. Okay, what now?
Because Rand helped show you what it means, what philosophy is, what philosophy is for, that there's an objective reality, that you have the tools to grasp reality and to integrate and to reason. We're only having this conversation because Rand explained things to us in a language we can understand, using a vocabulary that Aristotle also introduced to the world as well.
Right, and that does not make Rand a philosopher king. That makes Rand a genius of the ages, like Aristotle before her.
We're only having this conversation because of Aristotle's contribution to philosophy, you're taking for granted. It's like the equivalent of a stolen concept almost. It's like you're taking for granted all these things that philosophy taught us, and then you're saying, well, why should I
Does she do my thinking for me? How is that possible?
No, she shows us how to understand reality, and then she makes her arguments, and we then trust her, quote unquote, based on the arguments she's made. If Rand showed a faulty methodology, we'd be able to write her off. Is that so controversial?
It makes no sense to even discuss trusting philosophers or not. To bolster my argument even further, look, if a doctor uses a technical term, like refers to a part of the body, a part of my physiology, I don't know what that term means. And if I look up that term in a dictionary, the dictionary definition is not going to help me because I don't have the data of the term. I don't know what it is.
You can look up a medical journal or something. I don't know. Just like with the philosopher, you can look up their words in the dictionary. You can research with medicine.
Right. Why should a philosopher be the one expert of knowledge that you have to scrutinize every single thing that they say down to the most technical level in order to understand them, unlike a mechanic or doctor? I think this is a bias of Analyze This because he is interested in philosophy as such and understands philosophy's role in your life. So, but if he was a medical doctor instead, he might think the same thing about somebody should look into their medicine and things like that. And it's all very complicated knowledge. I don't think that there is any difference really between a philosopher and another expert.
So that's specialized knowledge. Like, I don't have knowledge already.
So your whole thing is like, oh, philosophy is general. It's not specialized. But so what? It's still a focused, specialized skill.
That would allow me to evaluate what this word refers to in reality. So I have to trust the doctor. I have to make a judgment about how much to trust him based on other things I know about him and other things he said. True of a philosopher. Philosophers use terms that are highly abstract. They
I don't know if it just cut or if I accidentally moved the cursor. Let me.
A philosopher. Philosophers use terms that are highly abstract. I'm
rewinding it.
So I have to trust the doctor. I have to make a judgment about how much to trust him based on other things I know about him and other things he said. True of a philosopher.
It was him who made the cut. I didn't want to be accused of, censorship or some shit.
Philosophers use terms that are highly abstract. They refer to the datum of everyday experience, trees and fences and grass and clouds and what your mind is doing, your humans, the actions of humans. I have to evaluate my coworkers. I have to evaluate what's happening in the culture. I have to evaluate what to do with my life and what's right to do with it. How do I do that without philosophy? How can I do that by just trusting a philosopher?
You trust a philosopher if you have reason to trust them, if they have shown you that their methodology is consistent with reality.
How do I employ their knowledge before I understand it as a matter of trust? I can't. So if a philosopher uses a word I don't understand, it's like, oh, I've never heard that word. I can just look up the word in the dictionary. And then if there are words in that definition that I don't understand, I can look up those words in the dictionary. And even if the philosopher is ill...
Well, if you don't understand anything, you have the power to research it, even strict medical science or car mechanics or pretty much anything these days. The detailed methodology is at your fingertips. So I don't see why philosophy is any different from these specialized fields.
Intention. Even if the philosopher is a hypocrite, it doesn't matter. I can evaluate the truth or falsehood of what they're saying by comparing what they're saying to what I know about reality. I can't do this in the case of the doctor because I don't know what he knows about reality. He knows things I don't know. This is not true of the philosopher. Everyone should be independently evaluating philosophical thought. Everyone. And
which is what we're doing.
Everyone, insofar as they have an explicit philosophy, should rely on their own independent understanding of it. You should never just take a philosopher on faith. Now, there are contexts in which it's appropriate to take a philosopher on faith, but those are not common contexts, and
No. It's never appropriate to take a philosopher on faith. It is appropriate to trust a philosopher who has given you enough evidence to be certain that they are trustworthy.
I'm not going to discuss those, and maybe I will save that discussion for a future video. But in general, in order to even employ philosophical knowledge, you have to have some independent grasp of it. You can't employ borrowed knowledge. It's impossible. You can copy someone else. You can copy Rourke, dye your hair red, and become an architect.
You're like arguing with a straw man. Like Pooya is a philosopher king. He's telling you to take philosophers on faith. I guess if they say one thing that's true, and you're just absolutely projecting a whole bunch of things here, and I'm apparently the guy who's nodding in agreement with this straw.
He is projecting, but I'm not sure if it is full-blown straw man, because a straw man, I think, is setting your opponent up with the weakest toppleable argument, and I think Analyze This may be honestly reacting to what he sees as skepticism. If you can straw man somebody on accident, then yes, this is a straw man. And I have not taken a formal course in logic, so forgive me if I make an error on this particular subject. But since I am operating in good faith, and I think I have enough evidence to suggest to me that Analyze This is simply trying to combat what he sees as skepticism, I do not think this is a straw man. He is just wrong because he is fighting an opponent that does not exist.
Oh man, you're absolutely losing it.
And just copy his mannerisms. You can copy, but you can't employ the knowledge. It doesn't matter if you trust.
Again, go back and actually play the clip of what Pooya said, and then skip back to this part and listen to what KJ is talking about.
Them or not. It matters if you understand them or not. It matters if you judge them to be right or not. Okay, so Pooya eventually did respond to me, so let's read his response. Okay, this is what he said. Okay, let me give you the answer. I thought this comment was so obviously wrong that no one would pay it attention. To clarify, I'm right and he's wrong. But it seems to be getting attention. If I ever saw a rationalistic argument, this is one. You basically put philosophy is general knowledge, therefore we can evaluate the truth or falsehood of what philosophers say ourselves. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. That's a fair paraphrasing of my point I said. And everyone can do that. And if you believe they can't, well, then who are you talking to, Pooya? Who's your audience?
No. People can evaluate philosophy by themselves. People can do pretty much any amount of intellectual legwork by themselves, except for the dumbest of us. But because we are animals of finite knowledge and finite lifespan, we should divide the labor in order to get the most out of what we enjoy. Now, as for myself and Rucka and Analyze This, I think it is pretty plain to say that we all enjoy philosophy as such, and therefore we are happy to do some of the legwork ourselves. And Rucka might even to a lesser extent than Analyze This, because he has other things he prioritizes with his music and comedy combined. So maybe Rucka is not particularly interested in going into the deep dregs of philosophy as such, and he'd just like to know of more people who can delve into it with a high degree of expertise.
People who can't understand you? People who can't evaluate the truth or falsehood of what you're saying?
Oh, yes. Okay, so yes, they can evaluate the truth or falsehood of what you're saying, but not everyone has the time for that.
Or you're just talking to the other philosopher kings, the other intellectuals, and 90% of the plebs listening to you have no hope of understanding you. This is utterly dropping the context and ignoring the reality of the world. Oh, is it? It does not integrate with literally anything. If it is so easy to understand and refute a philosopher, why no one could answer Kant before AR? Why most of people were praising Charles on nonsense he claimed?
Okay, that is pretty bad English. But Pooya is right that this does drop context in that the context is human knowledge is limited and not omniscient. He is taking his ability to evaluate individual facts, which is true. He's taking that and abstracting it away from the fact that he can't know everything, and making a generalized statement that he doesn't need to trust any particular philosopher, or he doesn't need to trust any particular knowledge, that he can evaluate it all by himself and remain objective, and therefore he drops the context.
Charles was right about a lot.
Yeah, and he also's got a Discord server where they're still discussing when is it right to rob a bank. You still have, people followed him off of a cliff. People's lives are going to be negatively affected indefinitely because of a lot of the stupid shit he said. Because he's getting out there just saying anyone who laughs at this joke is evil. You have to have... I don't get it. All right.
It is a smear job to sweep everything Charles said under the rug and act like he was just wrong about everything.
The question of, well, nobody said he's wrong about everything, so now who's doing the smear job? The question is, should we still refer to his body of work or not? Pooya is saying no, based on listing 10 examples of what Pooya believes to be examples of rationalistic tendencies.
Right, and I had enough evidence to not want to listen to anything Charles had to say after he made clear that he was an evader and unwilling to confront arguments against him. So, in that respect, I guess I discounted Charles wholesale before it was even clear to me that he was a rationalist. But my principle was, I have YouTube Red. Every second I watch a YouTube video is money in the pocket of individuals I watch, to my understanding. And I would not give Charles a cent by watching his videos. The only time I have ever watched a Charles video after the fallout with Rucka was after getting into an argument with somebody and needing to refresh my memory on exactly what Charles said. That was giving him some monetary assistance in exchange for an intellectual weapon against him.
Obviously, he's got to say some right things, but I mean, the question of whether or not Charles should be on the list of philosophers that we throw out is separate from the question of what should we do if a philosopher shows us faulty methodology. And if a philosopher shows faulty methodology, you can dismiss them altogether.
Absolutely. If you want good objectivist content, you have plenty of other places, better places to go than Charles too.
The question is, I think, whether Charles is there or not, whether he's that bad.
So, my position is what is true of my position is the exact opposite of what Pooya claims here. He claims it does not integrate with literally anything. It integrates with everything, because I'm right. He
says this integrates with everything because he's right. So he clearly recognizes that truth and that all facts integrate with all other facts. So I don't understand how he's missing that Charles being wrong about many things integrates with everything else that he does.
Oppositely wrong. He's not just a little bit wrong. He's oppositely wrong. He's wrong here.
The Charles 2 vibes are so strong with this one. I don't know how I never saw it before.
And I never said it was easy to understand philosophy. That's the, say, fallacy of equivocation. He's treating me as saying something I didn't say. I said anyone is capable of independently understanding philosophy. And that's true.
And what is also true is that the people who specialize in philosophy need to have an impeccable reputation. They make one mistake in their methodology, and it could lead to catastrophe. I'm not saying they should be like you make one mistake and you realize you made the mistake and you apologize and you fix it. That's one thing. But if somebody has shown rationalistic tendencies and they're not fixing it, it's up to you if you want to keep going through their work. And if you're at an advanced level, you might still be able to get some positive stuff from his work. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe an absolute genius that has tons of time on their hands could theoretically look at all objectivist content and absorb it all and still have time to watch Charles 2 and get the positive ends out of it. But as I said before, I highly doubt that he has anything original to offer. So,
if they so choose to put in the effort. Pooya doesn't believe that, though.
No.
He thinks only select people can understand philosophy.
I think you know exactly what he's saying. He's saying some people specialize in philosophy, and like doctors, their job is complicated and advanced and takes highly focused, specialized learning for decades. And they need their reputation to be clean. What is so controversial about that? And why are you multiplying that into so many things that he didn't say?
And most people have no chance.
Is this what they call deduction? Is this what they call just kind of taking something, an idea, and just inferring from it things that, I don't know. Now I don't even know what I'm saying.
Is, again, I can look up the words philosophers use in dictionaries.
Rationalists love substituting a word for its definition, by the way. You can look up every word in Kant's work, but you need to be a millennial genius to be able to understand what he's doing wrong.
I can understand what they're referring to in reality. I can't do this with specialized knowledge. If some physicist is talking about the components of an atom, I don't know what he's talking about. It's all floating in my head. I have no idea what he's talking about. I can't just look up his words in a dictionary and figure it out. You can do this with philosophical thought.
No, you can look up scientific knowledge and confirm it for yourself. I don't know why he holds a dictionary to such higher standard than an encyclopedia, which would tell you a wide breadth of knowledge outside of philosophy.
So I never said philosophy was easy. Philosophy is hard, but I believe anyone can do it. And I believe anyone can understand it, if they so choose to.
Anyone can study it. I hope all people will study it. And everyone at their various intellectual capacity can study it. But the philosophers themselves are the rulers of the world. They're the ones that all the other departments get their fundaments from, aren't they?
Fundamentals, but I think everyone should study philosophy to a certain extent, and I think it's a shame that it is not taught in lower education, like high school. The sad thing is in the current state of things, philosophy is a collegiate study, and therefore it is not a part of the package of general knowledge that everyone gets when they go through school. It would make the division of labor much more clear if everyone had a more basic general understanding of philosophy from a younger time in their life. But currently the division of labor is pretty much if you are interested in philosophy as such, then you are a student of philosophy, but if you have no interest in it, you have no knowledge of it other than the implicit knowledge that is in the culture.
Aren't they? So we need to be very careful when trusting a philosopher. And the way to do that, as I think is pretty clear, the way to do that is to make sure their methodology is impeccable.
Honest enough to tackle the responsibility. And in a rational culture, I think everyone would have a basic understanding of philosophy. And I think everyone at a basic...
You're arguing with the straw man, like you're saying things that people argue against objectivists because they don't understand what objectivists are saying. You should know better than to do what you're doing. People say, like, if they hear Peikoff saying philosophers rule the world and ideas are the motor of history, they say, oh, so you're saying that philosopher kings rule the world? No, it's that, like I just said a minute ago, philosophers are the ones doing the heavy lifting. But you're like taking...
Exactly. See, Rucka, I think, understands the division of labor and philosophers involved in it. Philosophers' involvement in it.
Taking things out on Pooya that are just inappropriate in this case?
Level would have a self-awareness of what their own philosophy is. And I think, yes, there's still a place for philosophers in this society, philosophers being the people who study other philosophies, who really get down into the weeds to give really precise clarifications.
What is the difference between getting down into the weeds and the more highly technical knowledge that doctors have? There's no real difference. I think he's making an argument against himself here.
But everyone at a general level needs some independent grasp of philosophy. And apparently that's just obviously wrong and not even worth engaging with, according to Pooya. So that was the disagreement. Oh my gosh. And yeah, it made me very upset. I got very upset about this. Not because I'm the victim necessarily, although maybe that's part of it, but because it annoys me to see the rules of disagreement and discourse so flagrantly violated. I mean, Pooya's action here is egregious. People should be calling him out. And I would like to thank James and Frog for joining into this thread. That was just of them to do, and I thank you both for doing that. You brought some much-needed sanity to this exchange with Pooya.
You look like you're losing your fucking mind, dude. Like, I feel like I'm watching a Spider-Man villain origin story.
I thank you both.
I don't think that criticism was highly appropriate from Rucka. I don't know why he chose to make that comment. I think maybe having the mind that Rucka has, he latches on to things and statements that he thinks might be funny to somebody or just to himself, and maybe he just observed this and thought it was funny to say. But I think Rucka is making an intellectual response to this person, Analyze This, and it's probably not appropriate to add in these kind of criticisms. The low energiness is excellent to criticize, in my opinion. The awkward video intro is excellent to criticize, in my opinion. But this I don't think is constructive.
Both for that. I'm upset because Pooya is wrong. He's so wrong, and he thinks he's
I have a question. Is Pooya wrong? Can you clarify? Can you specify?
so right that he's unwilling to even engage.
Now that was fine. That was funny. Like, he said the same thing over and over again, and Rucka just said something that he thought was funny. I guess that's a more clear example of what that thing was, or that of what his motivation was for saying earlier. But this comment on his delivery is more lighthearted and not as pointed at his character as the criticism of him looking like a crazy person, which I don't know if I think he did. I'm not really looking directly at the video in huge detail like that, but I think Analyze This, he is presenting himself in a fine manner.
Age with me. Now, let's point out the irony here. The original red flag I saw indicated to me that he has problems. He has some bad premise. I don't know what that is specifically, but the red flag was evidence to me. It suggested to me that he has a bad premise that affects how he's able to interpret others. Now, what happened when I disagreed with him? Well, I clearly hit some kind of nerve or something.
Oh, you hit his nerve? That's what this is? He's the one with some baggage?
He clearly was not able to handle this rationally. And he wasn't able to understand what I was saying. He failed to objectively understand my comment and message here.
I think there's misunderstanding definitely on the side of Analyze This, but I also think there is error on Pooya's side as well. It's hard for me to illustrate what my problem is with Pooya's methodology, because all I can really say for him is that he is very young and very smart, so that makes me tread with extreme caution when taking in his content, and I expect a lot more legwork from him than other people in order to prove himself. Partially because I have seen people like him become like Charles, become malevolent universe philosopher kings. Not that I think that is what he's doing, but I think there is a proneness to become as such when you're like Pooya. So I do apologize to Pooya for saying this, but I think I am going to reserve trusting you until you put a lot more legwork out there.
So the irony being, I called him out and saw evidence of him making a mistake, and the exact mistake entailed by his position was made in the exchange. So I love when disagreement is ironic like this. You know, this happens all the time with determinists. They make some mistake in the course of their argument that is predicted by the fact of their position.
I think this is a odd aside to throw in with Analyze This to describe his disagreement with determinists, because I don't think that he is accusing Pooya of being determinist here. But so it's unhelpful to throw this in as an aside.
And that's exactly what happened here. I mean, if Pooya doesn't trust me, well, how can he possibly understand me? I don't trust this person.
He thought your comment was stupid, and I can relate. I'm sorry. I think what he said comes off as rude. He says that was unintentional. He could have been less dismissive, absolutely. But the content of what you posted, when I read it, I'm just shaking my head. And for the reasons I've stated here today, I'm not a dumb guy. Neither is Pooya. I don't think you're a dumb guy, but I think I think something's up, and it's creepy as fuck. I did not peg you for Charles 2.0. This shit, some of the shit you're saying here today just creeps me the fuck out.
How can I evaluate what he's saying? I mean, presumably Pooya is one of the philosopher kings.
I mean, you look like you're having a meltdown. I've had some angry moments on the internet, but like, what is this? Have you ever stopped through the course of this and said, I'm reacting to a YouTube comment argument?
So I would imagine.
I'm trying to think about what to say about that, because I think not only is Rucka focusing on this a little bit too much, but I think he's clearly reacting with more emotion than Analyze This is reacting to Pooya. I think I've illustrated how I think Analyze This is wrong, but based on his premises, he's acting rationally in his reaction to Pooya. I think that Rucka's reaction here is a little bit more automatic. I think he's noticing things that he's become very wary of since being burned by Charles, but I'm not so sure that he has enough evidence to be reacting the way he is. I'm not sure. I'm gonna try to watch this more carefully and try to see where Rucka goes with this.
Imagine he would be able to, but how could other people evaluate what I'm saying? They're not philosophers.
Your comment was about philosophers, and he said, go study epistemology if you think it's so simple that anyone can do it. He wasn't saying nothing you say matters because you are not a philosopher, or anyone else who's not a philosopher. He is not a philosopher. I am not a philosopher. You are not a philosopher. We're all laymen talking about philosophy.
Okay.
I do think Rucka's philosophical analysis of this is relatively spot on. I've been slightly more specific in the errors, I think, but Rucka is he's analyzing this more on the fly. I've had time ahead look into these with a particular scrutinizing eye that he does not have the benefit of being aware of what to look out for because he's in the moment, and this is the second time I've watched this video.
What kind of culture do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a culture where every time there's a disagreement, people freak the fuck out and can't handle it?
Yeah.
And
don't you hate when people freak out?
There's a schism and we can't even talk to each other? Is that the kind of culture we want to live in where we can't disagree? Disagreement is fun. I love it.
You look like you're having fun.
That's why it's part of my motivation for doing this channel. I want to argue with people.
I think Rucka's kind of checking out here. I think part of it is because this aside by Analyze This is kind of pointless. He's going into the nature of disagreement, and it's a bit too formulaic for me. I can't say that this is on topic as far as I am concerned, but Analyze This is more interested in formal logic as far as I know of him. So this may be him trying to stay topical to his audience, but I'm just not grooving to it, and I don't think Rucka is here either.
So do we want to live in a society like that, where disagreement is just the Wild West and no one knows how to do it, and every time there's a disagreement, there's ad hominem attacks and fallacious reasoning and just chaos? Or do we want to live in a society where everyone is basically self-aware of the rules and principles of disagreement, and it's easy for most people to say, oh, that person's violating a rule of disagreement. They did something wrong there, and they need to correct themselves.
Oh. Okay, Hitler, what are you, the philosopher king now, telling us how to disagree?
What?
Yeah, you know you fucked up when Rucka uses his voice on you. I think it's actually pretty funny.
What kind of society do you want to live in? Which one is preferable to you? Disagreement is valuable. Disagreement is one of the better ways to challenge your beliefs. Disagreement is one of the better ways of acquiring more true beliefs.
Yeah, I'm absolutely checking out here. I probably am going to edit a large portion out just because is analyze this going into something that he is interested in and wanting to make a part of his content, but this is completely off topic to what why I am doing this video. So
No, it's the color of their skin.
You know,
shit, I
he
just skipped over.
evidence to me. It's John, and he thinks he's so right. What are we? Let's reason about what we're actually disagreeing.
yeah, Rucka is totally checked out of this whole nature of disagreement thing, and I cannot blame him. I'm insanely bored by this, and I apologize to Analyze This. I'm not saying that you are particularly boring, but I am saying that this is not my cup of tea. So, yeah.
By the way, we've got now 8 hours of Pooya on my channel. 2 4-hour videos, roughly. Watch those, guys. If you got the time, we're all quarantined. Watch Pooya, and then tell me if that's the guy who KJ is describing in this video.
I will also say that there is a lot of content by Pooya and on Pooya available to form kind of a judgment on him. And that is why I have formed the judgment that I think he is a little too young and a little too smart to fully trust yet. It's almost as if he does not know his own strength yet, and that's the best way I can put it. I really do apologize for having this opinion on Pooya, but I look forward to the day where he has done enough legwork for me to confidently say with certainty that he's a great thinker. I don't think that'll be when he is 40, but I think I've just witnessed too many young intellectuals go way off the deep end that I have to be careful about this kind of thing.
Just if you choose to, certain rules and guidelines come into play. So this should be possible, and if you're unwilling to do this when it's argued that it should be happening in the disagreement, that's on you, and you're doing something wrong, and people should be able to call you out. It's like, no, like, you need to clarify what the disagreement is here, because it's unfair of you not to. Okay. Second principle. You can usually ask for clarification. Now, I say usually. You can't always ask for clarification.
I'm going to
So
skip
if
ahead
someone
a
says
bit.
if someone says something confusing and
This is desperately boring to me. I'm sorry. I don't think this is the point of this video. The point of the video is, Pooya is a philosopher king and won't disagree respectfully.
I forgot that he says this, but obviously I agree. This is completely off topic. In fact, it's so incredibly not what I'm talking about right now that I have to get a snack real quick in order to not go insane. And we're back. Okay. Let's get back into this.
I think that's the point.
Now, in most cases and in most contexts, in my experience, most disagreements I've seen among people are horribly irrational. It is possible to have a rational disagreement, which is part of the point of this video.
What's that about most people? Okay, Hitler. What is this? Who do you think you are?
But here,
Obviously, I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek right now.
here's what I've noticed about the emotion to or the desire to want the last word. There's an aspect to that that's rational. It's good to want to have the last word because it means that you want to complete the disagreement. You want there to be a resolution. Now, sometimes, and so it's broken up into units of verbal exchange. And after each unit of verbal exchange, you can say, okay, well, this is where we left off, and we'll pick up next time. And that would be an example of concluding that unit of disagreement. And that's good. That's proper.
I mean, we've all had conversations before. We've all had debates and exchanges. I don't know if these new rules are necessary, but I guess maybe I could probably use them, to be honest. I've been very hot-headed at times.
So,
I think it's hard to put my finger on what Rucka's error is here. I think it's clear that his emotional reaction to some of these things is an error of some kind, but these kind of errors are harder for me to figure out than a simple error in logic like Analyze This is making. From what I know, emotions are automatic based on previously held premises, and so Rucka's tendency to react the way that he has reacted when it has been negative may be based on habit of something formed by what he thinks is a funny reaction to have, or I'm not entirely sure. I think it is up to Rucka to introspect and figure that out. I do not think that it overrides his passion for truth and philosophy. I think he is a fairly excellent individual, and he's pretty much my greatest hero. Yeah, I don't know. But I think, judging from the fact that I've been invited to talk about this, shows that Rucka is willing to see a different side of the argument. So, at least he is working on that.
So in general, and you can do this tacitly, especially if you really know the other person, but in general, it's good to conclude disagreements and kind of step back and evaluate the disagreement thus far and explicate how it's gone and how it plans on going in the future, or to evaluate the disagreement. Okay, so those are just 3 important things that I came up for this video. This is by no means a careful formulation of the proper standards and practices of disagreement. Although this is, say, a component video of that larger conversation. And I have a dream. I have a dream of a world where disagreement is rational. And there's self-aware, agreed-upon standards of disagreement within the community. And people can disagree without having to worry about ad hominem attacks or being told to take an epistemology course.
Jesus, you're so worked up about a YouTube comment. He doesn't know who you are. He's never heard of you. You're acting like it's his job. I mean, he could have just not answered. But you just made a 35-minute video about a YouTube comment.
So,
well, it has become an hour and a half long video of you responding to him, and probably a 3 or 3.5 hour video of me responding to you. So I think it is clearly gone too far. Yeah.
to conclude, I think it would be helpful. Look, Pooya violated a principle that was very important here, but the cost of the violation in this instance was very, very low. If Pooya apologized and reflected on this exchange and, say, admitted he was wrong, because he is, I would forgive him instantly. I have no hard feelings. I have no resentment.
No.
I don't think he's going to do that, and I don't think that's going to happen. But if that were to happen, instant forgiveness from my perspective.
It's very kind.
I think he failed to live up to the standards set by Rucka Show. What kind of guess are you?
Before going into this whole spiel that Analyze This is going to do, I do think it's pretty clear that he is trying to operate on good faith, and much like I am trying to interpret him in good faith. Yeah.
So you have it on here, Rucka.
Not you.
Andrew Bernstein was a guest on Rucka Show. Andrew Bernstein set the implicit bar for guests on Rucka Show. And 20-year-old version of Andrew Bernstein. Pooya is not living up to the bar set by 20-year-old version of Andrew Bernstein. Let me clarify 2 more things here. If I were just an anonymous person, if my username was Durka36945578, and I made that exact same comment, Pooya's response would still be egregious.
I agree with that.
If I were not older than Pooya, which I am, but if I were younger than Pooya, and I had an anonymous username and made that exact same comment, Pooya's response would still be egregious. So that...
I also agree with that.
And if I were wrong, if I made an intelligent comment that was grammatical and thought out, which clearly I did, but I was wrong, it would still be egregious for Pooya to behave like he did. So that I'm right, and that I'm much older than Pooya, and that I'm not anonymous, is just gravy on top of Pooya's mistake. So this isn't an issue of, I think, Pooya being 20 years old or his first language not being English. This is a mistake that he made. And it would be, in my opinion, a rationalization to write off this mistake as him being 20 and his first language not being English. And the mistake is deeper than just his behavior in the disagreement. He's wrong about how to think about trusting philosophers.
No, he's not wrong about that. You are wrong about trusting philosophers. But Pooya is wrong in that he reacted in anger.
And the role of trust in listening to people. He has some deeper premise there that's wrong.
Yeah, he's the one with some deep-seated shit, not you.
I think it actually may be a legitimate criticism that Pooya might, out of the 2 of them, be the more emotionalist in tendency. Although that could be a gross over-exaggeration of the worst-case scenario. I don't think Pooya is currently an emotionalist. I think maybe this one time is where he let his frustration slip, but I think he should be wary of not making a habit of that. But Analyze This is not being an emotionalist here. He is, to an extent, being a rationalist in that he is following an argument that he has constructed, although it is wrong. He is following it out, detached from how things really are.
I'm going to end today's video with a reading from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I clarify and add that I do not consider myself an alcoholic or an addict, but I am familiar with AA and the 12 steps, and I think that there is wisdom to be had here. I think the 12 steps emphasize very important things that perfectly integrate with objectivism that aren't emphasized in objectivism.
I'm not sure from what context Analyze This is bringing Alcoholics Anonymous into this, but I can wager a guess that he knows of the 12-step program and how it integrates with objectivism because of Rucka.
So I'm on page 84 of the big book.
Wow, he must be right. Well, he really got me there. Oh, A. Now you must... Pooya's got to be wrong now.
This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to...
You take personal inventory. You're pulling out the big book to take Pooya's inventory.
To set right any new mistakes we go along. As we go along.
Condescending.
We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for altruism, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When those crop up, we ask ourselves at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. And what step 10 says is continue to take moral inventory, and when we are wrong, we promptly admit it.
Whoa, that was spooky. All right, here's my comment. I always nod when I'm thinking. I apologize for any trouble I have caused. For what it's worth, I raised Pooya's comment etiquette on Diego's show. Yeah, so what creeps me out is the Charles II mannerisms, the approach. Just like, I've noticed Rucka did not get a red flag. That is interesting. Creepy as fuck. And yeah, the comments, outstanding, 100% agreement. Yeah, like, oh, Garrett, yeah, oh, perfect, yeah, paying lip service to everyone as usual. Yeah, people pleasing, that's great. You guys are clowns, all right?
I have noticed a problem here. And I have noticed a problem with my own interpretation of Pooya. And I have noticed that Rucka is having the same problem with Analyze This. And I think it is that for one reason or another, he is not operating in good faith. And I'm unsure of what level of good faith to extend to Pooya, considering the reasons I have to be suspicious of him. I'm going to need to think about this a lot, and I don't know.
I have to twist all of your arms to say one negative thing about Charles, but you're all piling on big bad Pooya. You guys are unserious. Let's watch the, it's 3 hours and 22 minutes.
I do agree that people extend too much benefit of the doubt to Charles too. I don't know. I think people should be careful with Pooya because, going by my division of labor argument, him being so intelligent, so quick to pick up objectivism, and so young, I think that he is likely, if he makes an error, to sweep away a lot of people, and they would follow him in a similar manner to how people follow Charles.
Let's see. Oh, it actually takes you there. How can you convey concepts in the form of taste? Not working, so maybe I need to. Maybe that's at my end. One sec. taste.
Yeah.
Well, that I'm not sure, but I'm not sure how it works with sound either. So, all I can say is I don't think I have enough evidence personally to be convinced of it not being a legitimate form
Well,
of
you
art.
don't prove a negative.
Oh yeah. See, I love that the snap recognition of that error on account of Rucka and Pooya. And just looking at Pooya there, you can tell he's operating on not hating me for my error there. So I enjoyed being on the show with Pooya. I look forward to further chances to talk to him. I'm just very wary of people with an excellent grasp of these things, because when they go wrong, they go very wrong. But I've got no doubt that Pooya will do the legwork and prove that he is trustworthy. Yeah,
Jinx. You prove it positive.
You got me.
Yeah. So can we? I mean, I don't mind this topic at all, but maybe we can sort of move it to another topic if you guys are pacified. Now, Pooya, you had a bit of a argument in the comments section of our last conversation. Do you mind me bringing this up, because I think it can be a beneficial opportunity for all of us to learn. Now, no one has been more rude than I have in YouTube comments, so it's an ongoing thing for me. Let me say that. 1, 2.
He admits that he's dealing with something. Rucka, I think, is aware that he can react or overreact sometimes. I do the same thing in my arguments. Sometimes I get extremely frustrated. I think it's something just to try to keep in the back of your mind about when it's appropriate to argue in good faith.
Oh, now he's got to run. 2.
No, I'm cracking my back. I'm listening.
No. Pooya just jumped off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back.
Okay. Usually you're like adjusting your headphones periodically, and now you're not even wearing them anymore. But so Pooya, I agree with you as far as the content of the argument. I don't quite understand what the other guys are what point they're trying to make, but I think your initial response was a little surprising to people, because you're always this super sweet guy, right?
Also, I don't understand how Rucka's mic is so good here, and my mic only sounds that good in post-production. But we will, this is a work in progress. I want to create some very high-quality content, and I look forward to my mic sounding that good on a stream and not just post-production in a video.
And then, like, your response to the original comment was something like, hey, if you ever want to actually study epistemology, feel free. But till then, why don't you just go do something else and let us, or not us, but let the intellectuals handle this? Which I'll tell you how that looked. I'm not saying this is the case, but I'll tell you how it looked. It looks like you're kind of like Anakin Skywalker, like you're achieving greatness, and you're starting to show some teeth. You're starting to show signs of a Mr. Friendly inside. You know who Mr. Friendly is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I changed that comment, and I got that. So 2 things. Firstly, I'm look, I'm not perfect with communicating in English. I know enough abstract English, but when it comes to actually communicating with people, I have very, very few people who I can talk to with in English, and so that's one problem. And second problem, the answer that I gave was in the context of his question. So I was actually trying to. First, I'm not saying that I didn't make a mistake. I made a mistake, and I was really sad about it. But what I want to say is that the answer was in the context of his question. His question was that philosophy is basically. His question was that philosophy, everyone can learn it, everyone can see if it's true or not. And I wanted to see to tell him in that answer that it's not easy. You have to learn epistemology. That's what I wanted to say to him, but it came up a really bad way. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you on this. Again, I don't understand what the other guys in that argument. I don't understand the point they're trying to make. It's almost like a married couple arguing just to argue, like they're both right, you know, like the point they're focusing on is correct.
Do so you I don't have quite the comment that I could pull up.
We can.
I don't know. I don't know why Rucka draws this comparison to them both being right, because they're not. But maybe he's making some integration here that I'm missing. But I think, I don't know. He's talking on the fly. I don't know what he's getting at there.
You can read them. I mean, I can
screen share if you want to give me the link for it. What video is it under?
It's the last one with Pooya.
Okay.
Whatever it was called.
All right, I'm gonna go hunt for it. Give me a second.
Is that okay, Pooya? Do you mind me bringing this up? I mean, I like challenging people, but
so it's not the same.
Oh, you edited it?
Yeah.
Oh.
How dare you fix a mistake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was ashamed of it.
Yeah, I think my opinion on errors that you make online, I'm not sure where I stand on it. I think maybe the best option, if you say something in error, instead of changing your reply, do something more amenable. I hope that's a good word. Instead of changing your reply, maybe you should just reply again, or in addition. Like, if you say something in anger and you realize it was an error, instead of changing it, just simply add another comment and say, I realize this and that error. This is my new feeling, and move on from there. If an apology is required, apologize. But once a comment is read, if you say something mean and somebody reads it, changing it to something not as mean does not erase the memory from the person who read it, and their interpretation of why you changed it could be many different things. So I think, to be clear the most, I think you should simply just add another comment, not edit the previous one. Clearly, even after editing, Analyze This still considered Pooya's original comment as a factor.
Really?
Oh, then I feel bad bringing this up. I didn't know. I thought maybe you're either confused by why anyone would take issue with it or what. I didn't know you were regretful. So that's why I thought maybe there was an opportunity to explore the topic. But if I knew you were somewhat remorseful about it, I don't think I would have brought it up.
Oh, I'm taking a look for it. Is it under the one titled Bro?
No. Analyze This.
Oh, the one with the 20 replies.
Okay.
I see it here.
And Fragmentary just replied to me, and that's
It's amazing. Now, Diego, you're sharing the screen on. I see it on YouTube, but on our Google Hangout, You're not sharing the screen. What's going on with this world?
I did.
Yeah. The technical difficulties on last week's show were incredible and unprecedented. I cannot really understand what was going on.
I did mention earlier today I'm having massive technical problems and usually I'm an incompetent dwarf anyway, so I don't know why you're still surprised by this shit. Okay,
it's technology more than it's you. I don't know how there's multiple things happening.
All right, there we go.
Now I
zoom in a bit. There we go. Okay.
maybe if somebody had publicly shamed Charles about.
Okay, now what's going to happen here is every time someone talks, like it's going to jump back to the speaker. Sorry, Bonar, you were saying something. I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is going to jump back to me, but I was going to say maybe if somebody had publicly shamed Charles about his conduct earlier on, he would not have become. No, I'm just. So I did not mean this to single out Rucka here. I was thinking more like maybe if somebody had invited him on a show like this and then pointed out his comment and said something about it, maybe it would have made things a little bit more clear. But this was mostly a joke. It was not intended to be at Rucka's expense, although the interpretation to make it look like it was at Rucka's expense is extremely obvious, and I regret that because I generally would not poke fun at Rucka for how horrible Charles was. That seems inappropriate. I'm teasing.
Well, I definitely was complicit with Charles, as he, was very harsh with people. And I'm not saying Pooya is anywhere close to that with the comment he left today, but I think people were surprised, including myself, like, oh, wow, like I was not expecting that.
Well, reading this here, my thing is that Pooya went into what Analyze This said, and Pooya spoke his mind, what he thought was honest, and I assume you're not being dishonest. So I'm thinking you as honest from what I know from you, and other people here said the opposite. And what I take from this is still do not be afraid of speaking your mind. If you say something that's incorrect, just learn from it and move on. Or if you say something that other people say is incorrect, but it actually is, then just ignore them. You only have one of those two choices. If I had to leave the internet every time I said something stupid or typed something retarded, either on Discord or on these videos, I would have been off the internet probably the very first episode of this show.
I don't think the issue is so much who said something stupid, but more like saying this comment shows how much you need a course in epistemology. Like people were a little bit surprised.
This comment shows that you need a course in epistemology. Either go learn it and become an informed, proper intellectual, or go learn whatever you choose to do and let the intellectuals do the philosophical thinking.
It was really bad.
When I typically read a comment like this, so this is my sense of life. When I read this, I would 99% of the time read that as sarcastic, but that's me, and I know that's not everybody out there. Now, I'm just curious.
What do you mean sarcastic?
I think it's probably an error to assume sarcasm. I'm not exactly sure. But the subject matter is serious, and it's a little bit inappropriate to dive into a technical argument about it and then throw around sarcasm, in my opinion.
Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Well, what do you mean sarcastic? In what part of it would be sarcastic? That he's not condescending, like he's not putting
the context I have is that I know Pooya as one way, soft-spoken, careful in what he says, and then we have this comment here where he's uncharacteristically, not attacking, but uncharacteristically being strong in his opinion, something I don't hear from him on video or on Discord conversations. So my experience with Pooya is one way, and seeing this comment kind of hits like a little break in the...
Yeah, but Pooya is not that sarcastic. Criticizing Pooya is one of the hardest things I have tried to wrap my brain around today, and maybe it's because I don't have any reason for wanting to criticize him, and maybe it is because it's just beyond me, but
gears in the back of my head, and my mind is like, Pooya normally does not respond this way, so this to me comes off as sarcastic. Now, this is not sarcastic.
Yeah, see, the blue-collar objectivist here is he's integrating what he knows about Pooya based on countless hours of evidence. He's not taking one YouTube comment and doing a 35-minute video inferring things from the comment.
But
or from the one remark as part of a 5-hour or even 8 hours if you add both videos.
I'm just basing it how I know Pooya. This is uncharacteristically strong or uncharacteristically confident.
I feel really dumb bringing this up now. Like, we've got like a video on the internet where we're like hyper focusing on like a YouTube comment. Sweet irony. Like, if all my YouTube comments were the subject of a conversation on the internet, I would be very unhappy. I shouldn't have brought this up, I don't think. I mean, or we shouldn't have pulled up the comments.
We can always just leave it at that. I mean, Pooya obviously is a growing individual, and maybe he has gone through one of his infamous 2-week phases.
Maybe that's.
Guys, you got this all wrong. You're not getting this point. The point is that he's Andrew and I'm Fletcher, and I'm throwing a chair at his head. If tomorrow he vanishes, then he would never be the bus driver that we would want him to be. But if tomorrow he comes back stronger than ever, then we know the kind of character that Pooya is. So there you go, Pooya. That's all I was doing.
It was wrong. It was wrong what I did, definitely. And I was actually feeling really bad the whole day. And I wanted to read the comments.
That's good. I mean, it's good that Pooya does not have that infallible arrogance that Charles Dew had. This is a extremely good sign, and it may be the first step of the legwork that I was talking about, of him proving that he is trustworthy.
What I said is like it's already there, so if I delete it, it would be in a way that it was worse. So the edit was not changed in a dramatic way. I just removed desperate need to change desperate need to just need.
Yeah. Pooya's decision to fix his error is correct. Even more correct would have been to just follow up with a comment that said why he would like to rephrase. And the past is the past. It's written. Yeah, the past is the past. It's not something you can change. You can just expand upon it and improve what you said.
Now
it's all good.
I wanted to say sorry to him, but at the end, it was obvious that he wasn't mad at me anyway, and then we reconciled later in the comments. But the thing was, I don't know if it's really like the thing is, people here, one person says the philosophy is not it's like knowledge everyone knows, everyone can easily understand, and like being a medical doctor is something only smart people, not smart, only like elite, not elite, but how should I say, only some people understand because it's like medicine. And what I'm trying to say is that because I've studied enough philosophy to see it's really it's not like short selfishness, selfishness, capitalism, like existence. It's not just like that. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And
yeah, and KJ read the same stuff, and he's studied objectivism for much longer, but for some reason wants to die on this hill. I don't fucking understand it, man.
there is like people should not be like there should be someone who is just.
I think the answer is that this guy analyze this. He is trying to avoid the error of skepticism. So good on him for good intentions, but you do not have to be a skeptic to draw the conclusion that Pooya is drawing.
Epistemologist. I mean, he dedicates his life only to epistemology, and that's it. And he cannot even get very far on that. So it's a really, really huge subject. Rand economized the whole philosophy for us, so we can just say reason, purpose, self-esteem. That's it. And that's a really huge unit economy that there is there. But if you really want to understand the philosophy, if you really want to understand why selfishness is required existentially, and I don't know, if you really want to understand how induction works, which was something that Peacock worked on for 20 years, and then he didn't get a definite answer at the end. I'm saying it's a really big subject, and people just because they think philosophy is not limited to a laboratory or to a hospital, access to everyone, and that is something that I'm contesting in this comments.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I agree with you on the content, and I'm a little bit unsure why this is a hill that anyone would want to die on. It's yes, there are differences between a doctor and a philosopher, but as we've seen time and time again, if a philosopher doesn't do their job like the average person, anyway, I mean, you made your points in the comments section, and I think people familiar with our context know how important a philosopher's job is. And again, I've been rude to people. I know the feeling where like you want to tell someone like you're so wrong that like I'm insulted by how wrong you are. So I get it, you know. I do feel kind of bad for bringing this up, like, but you know, but Pooya, like, remember, you have to remind yourself, like, you're now in a place where like people have seen you prove yourself, and I think a lot of people look up to you now.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of people, they're like really impressed by what you've shown so far. So with great power comes responsibility, as Spike.
Yes, I think Pooya has an insanely strong grasp of objectivism and an insanely strong gift of intelligence, and he has youth on his side. So he's got a head start on all this, and I think it's good for him to be wary of suffering any kind of rationalism or emotionalism like beset A1, Charles A2. And I think yeah, that's not saying that being brilliant is puts you under suspect. It just means that please do the legwork and prove yourself, because Pooya could easily be the next Leonard Peikoff, talking about how he used to make these errors and now he has mastered his defeat of these errors, instead of being a Charles II where he is wallowing in his errors.
Spider-Man puts it. There's Spider-Man again.
Do you?
By the way, listen to that. Listen to Pooya go. What a philosopher king, right? What a just closed-minded, hostile, short-sighted philosopher king, right?
Right. I think it's probably probably clear by listening to Pooya talk that he is operating honestly.
Feel that when somebody poo-poos philosophy that you have this urge to defend it? Is that where this came from, or is there another context for your response? Like, basically what I'm asking is, what do you care what other people think about philosophy?
That's actually the question I asked myself at the end, and I said, "Why did I even start this conversation? I'm working on my novels all day, and I take my phone and see someone commented. What did I think? That's just to engage into comments. I mean, if there is a comment with someone I know and I care about what they think, that's something else. But like random people who I don't know, I should not have started this whole chain, and it's been going on for too long. And I certainly learned from my mistake, and I'm going to reserve my right to be silent.
What do you mean, people you don't know? He's older than you. Don't you know that? Don't you know everything about him?
Like,
Cool.
I could do a little.
Out of this.
No. For me personally, okay.
God, what an asshole! Just look at that tyrannical face.
Because I'm an old man. Remember, I'm 40 years old, so I'm the only person in objectivism today that can actually be a philosopher. Exactly.
The only one in objectivism.
Nobody else. Nobody else.
Everyone else.
No one else is older 40.
Okay, so I also had that in many different aspects. I'm not going to talk about everything, but I grew up in New York, and when people would... Okay, let me just shorten this. So yes, I also had this phase, and I don't mean that in a derogatory...
All right. For more of this Diego variety show, link in the description. I'm gonna, I think that's about the extent to which we need to play that. Anyway, this was, I don't know. It definitely weirded me out. The whole, I've noticed Rucka does not get the red flag. Creepy as fuck. KJ, you're weirding me out. And I think you've got a bright future, unfortunately. You could have a bright future, fortunately, in a positive way, but I think what you've demonstrated here could also be a bright future, because people gravitate to this shit like flies on dog shit. When you show anger and just deduce and absolutely invent a straw man and completely act like Charles II against an imaginary enemy, people gravitate to that, as seen in your comments section. Just, outstanding, 100% agreement, says Frog. 100%. Nothing wrong with that, with the meltdown we just saw there, right? Yeah, the two counselors here meet.
I think Frog is getting hit in the crossfire here. I enjoy Frog Machinery, although I put Frog in the same category as Pooya, not because he is young and brilliant, but because he is experienced and brilliant in a suspect field of psychology. So, although Frog has done quite a large amount of legwork already, he has written a book, and I am carefully watching his YouTube channel and taking in his content. I'm even a Patreon supporter of Frog Machine. I'm being careful, but I am watching him with a lot of hope, and I'm waiting for him to talk about specific topics that particularly interest me in order to how to respond to him rationally. But overall, I think Frog is great, but and I think psychology in certain areas like cognitive behavioral therapy is great, but I'm just careful of Frog because I know that psychology is a weird animal and has a lot of basis in bad philosophy.
Perfect. Is the big book against altruism, or did you add that? Haha, I added that. Sorry, I should have said it was a modified reading.
If you made a mistake like that,
You clearly need a course in epistemology. Good meme. Good meme. Yeah. Pooya's the guy now who told everyone to go study epistemology if you disagree with him.
I think that joke is fair. Pooya made an error, and I think just based on that error, that joke is fine. But
that's exactly what he said. It's exactly what he said. All right. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. I think my days of being nice to people that weird me out and show a lot of weird red flags are over. I'm just tired of welcoming people and encouraging people who then have angry meltdowns and throw me under the bus at the first chance they get. Everybody out there.
So, here, I'll just let Rucka finish off before I give my closing.
Hope you learned something valuable. It's never too late for any of you, or for me, for that matter, to look inward, but even just as importantly, look outward and actually look at the evidence. See, there's some psychology tips for you. There's some counseling. There's a pep talk. Look inward, but also look outward at the evidence. But I am freaked out. That was absolutely, I wasn't gonna even respond to this video because KJ wants to be featured on my channel. I wasn't going to reward this meltdown with attention, but the Charles 2 vibes creeped me the fuck out, and then just seeing this unequivocal positive response from the admittedly small sampling, but just seeing a bunch of people saying oh yeah, perfect, great job, you showed him. It just feels like inevitable now that the next rationalistic philosopher king mystic is going to come along and speak in the name of objectivism and start issuing these angry edicts. It just seems like these Spider-Man villains are just uncontrollable. I think we're fucked.
Okay. I don't know what else is there, but this is a fine place to make my closing statement, I think, because I'm going on 3 hours here. I think Rucka is being a little overly wary of potential burns again. Charles was pretty much admired by everybody that ran in my philosophical circles when he was active up until he blew up on Rucka, and so I think Rucka is extremely sensitive to any giveaways that somebody could be making a similar error to Charles. But I think Rucka needs to keep in mind that rationalism, which is the heavy error of Charles, was rationalism is the thinking man's error, the thinking man's disease, rather. And so he's going to probably see those tendencies in everybody that studies philosophy to a certain degree. I think maybe we all need to operate in some good faith. Maybe I need to back off of Pooya just because he's a Jimmy Neutron boy genius. Doesn't mean he's going to use his Superman strength to punch me in the nuts. Maybe I need to back off of being so wary of Frog Machine for being a psychology guy and Maybe we all need to operate in a little bit more good faith. Yeah, I think that might be the tone at which I want to end this video. To anyone who sees this, I'm not sure to who I'm releasing it to. Maybe just Rucka, maybe to the wider YouTube audience, but to anybody watching, thank you for joining me on this 3-hour excursion. Peace out. I hope to see you in the next video. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, consider subscribing to my channel. Let me know what you think about this topic in the comments down below. Until next time, peace.